So, as some of you have seen, I kind of know how to do logic. Like, I know how to do logic enough to make, like, mechs and stuff, which I really like doing, and I know that a lot of people have a hard time with it, and, like, they don't fully understand even where to begin with it and where to go with it. So I figured I'd kind of make a video breaking down how I think about it and how logic works in my head. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is just going to be to do something that I've, like, done a ton of times before and kind of explain how I'm going through what I'm thinking and, like, what I'm doing. So I'm going to try and make something that can just, like, normally hover. I might turn it into a video. Not into a video. I'm making this a video. Actively recording. I might turn it into a vehicle and, like, actually do stuff with it. But I kind of just, like, want to see what I can do with something that hovers. Now, I have some gyros down. This is not super important to the logic, but I do want it to be fairly stable. I think that that's going to be enough. I might need to increase the strength later, but it's fine. And then, one thing I'll often do is I will piston glitch logic into the build that I'm doing. I don't always do this, sometimes I just, like, replace a bunch of slots, but because we're making them small, I kind of want to piston glitch it, so that we have there. And I want to make this hover. And what components do we need to make something hover? Okay, well, first off, we need, like, the general thrust component. So we have that here. This is just, like, what's going to let us hover at all. And then we need a way to detect if we're going downwards at all, and how I like to do that is I like to use a speed sensor in gadgets that looks like this, and then you can build this like that. And this will detect, I have it facing up, one for connections so I can have more on the bottom, and two because I like to actually have it be like, okay, so if you just have it when you're going down, then you have to be going down in order for it to activate the thrusters at some speed. That's not my favorite, and it causes you to, like, slowly drift down. So what I like to do is, if we're not going 0.01 upwards, and it said 0, but it still knows that it's the 0.00, that's 0.00, it's the 0.01, and then I have that. You could just run that straight into this. The problem with that is that, oh, I forgot to invert the trigger. I have to get out of the build and repair now. Well, I want to make a key to go down, and I want it so that if I'm not pressing the key, it just automatically does this, but if I am pressing the key, it can go down, and we do that with just a NOT gate. Like, you can just hook this up into here. I'm going to set the key to shift. That's just how you normally do it, but I like to form sentences around logic in order to know what I'm going to do. You can, like, write these down, you can remember these however you want to, but I want it to be, if I am not pressing left shift, and and the speed is correct, so that we're not falling down, I want it to trigger the thrusters, because if I am pressing that, I want it to stop triggering the thrusters. So how we're going to do that is we're just going to use an AND gate, right here, and we're going to make it so that if not pressing shift, and this, like, little, we're not actively going up, then you can trigger these, and we're actually going to unhook these from that. And what that does is it means that we can go up, but it also means that if I press the left shift, it no longer completes the AND gate, and we can fall. And then we have space to go up, because that's just activating the thrusters at full speed, not the little toggling that you can see it happen when it's hovering. And left shift cuts the thrust, so we can do that. Another thing we can do, however, is because the AND gate just needs a signal at all, we can also set this to, like, 0.4, and it will also work. But what we can then do is hook this into all of the thrusters, so that we can kind of go down slower. Wait, yeah, that's not how that works. Because I swapped it, I needed an XOR gate for when I pressed shift, not a NOT gate. But if I then put in an XOR gate, right here, and I set it to left shift, then we can toggle these and go down slower than just falling. 0. Let's try 0, not negative, 0.3. That is not how that is supposed to work. 1 second. I still have the NOR gate running into the things. Okay, so if we go up, now if I go down, then we still have some thrust activated, meaning that we can fall slower than a full stop, but we're also not going up from that. And with that, I kind of have made a little vehicle of sorts, but that's just one example of logic. But side note, for some smaller builds, you might need to make this just a little bit higher, so I'm going to do that. And then, this is what I ended up doing with this. It's not too big. I kind of like its size. I used some of the sloped corner pieces to frame the build in general. Like, I have some in the back there to frame the quantum rudders, and I also added these decently useless wings, but they look cool. And I do kind of want to add guns to this. This part isn't as important, but, you know, it's fine. I want to add... I kind of want to add, like, little air intakes for the guns. Like, that style. And then... this is attached to that. Yeah, we can just have guns on the lower part. I'm gonna go to combat. I don't want the tiny cannon, I want the, tiny blaster. You can make the main that, and then that. Duplicate that over there, and when it piston clips in, it's just gonna be that little bit there. So I'm gonna flip these upside down, and then we can just see the little blasters. So that's this little build done, but I wanted to move something that a lot of you would want to know how to do, and I kind of want to make like a gear shifter logic system to explain more of how I think about logic. So how would I do that? First off, I'm gonna start out with a seat, and then how many gears do I think I want? We're just gonna use Bulldog engines, just for the size, but you could use any of the engines, including space. Like, you could use any of the rocket thrusters, too. For simplicity, let's just go to 4 gears. First one, always gonna be well, you know what, let's make a neutral gear as well. So, then we're going to have an accumulator, which is right here. And what this does is it lets us basically save data values at the press of a button, so I can have that set to up, that set to down. We're going to use left click and right click just because it's easier and I don't have to use my right hand on my keyboard. I can just do it from my mouse, which I also control my camera with, so I'm going to do it like that. We're going to set the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 4 because we have 4 gears. So there's actually 5 positions that it could be in. It could be in 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 0. And I'm going to use steps, and just for the sake of it, I'm going to, not an altitude sensor, I'm going to put a number display right there, hook this into that so you can see the number that it's currently at. We're currently at 0. If I press left click though, we go to 1, now we're at 2, now we're at 3, and now we're at 4. We can then use this comparison logic gate, and we're going to need 4 of those, and these are all going to be equals to, and this accumulator is going to run into all of them. Let's just do it like this. So this one is going to equal 1 if the accumulator equals 1. Actually, first off, all of these engines need an AND gate so that we can have it only when we're pressing W. Forgot that part. Should have put it before. That it's fine. So we need an AND gate for each engine. And this is just the first gear. We're going to put that into one of the gates. This is one engine. This is going to be the first speed. This one, we're going to set it equal to 2. So when we're in the second gear, the accumulator is on the second step. Now we can power 2 of these. The third one, we're going to set that to 3. Now we can power 3 gates. And the fourth one, we're going to set that to 4. Now we can power all of the AND gates. What the OR gates are going to do is it's going to take if any of the inputs are on, and what that's going to do is then trigger the AND gates, so that way we don't need to have Gear 1 and Gear 2 active at the same time to power this one. I just forgot how AND gates worked like that for a second. So we're going to get an OR gate for each one, run those into that, and then we're going to run the OR gate into the AND gate because we still want it to be able to do, like, when we're pressing W. Okay, now we have all of those wired in. Now we can rewire this into 2 OR gates. Actually, this is the first one. 1 OR gate, 2 OR gates, 3 OR gates, so 1, 2, and then 3. And then this one we're going to run into all 4 of the OR gates. Now, there's probably an easier way to do this. Do I know it? Not off the top of my head, so I'm not gonna use it. Just for the sake of attaching wheels, I'm gonna rotate those like that. And then what we can do is we can have an XOR set to W, running into all of the AND gates. This will make it so that the gear that we're currently in only activates when we're hitting W. We've gone ahead and moved the number display to there, so if we go in first person, that's not going to work out. And then I can go like that. First person, we're going to use top of seat. So then if I press left click, left click, left click, left click, if we look outside. Now all of them, I'm going to rotate these back just to show you. Okay, so we have gear 0. Nothing's activated, none of the engines on the AND gates are going through, the left arrow is not, like, going through. If I press forwards, though, then that OR gate triggers, and we can press forwards, and now one engine would be going. If we press it another time, one more time, now both of those are going forward, so we have 2 engines going forwards, now we have 3, now we have all 4. Now let's look up some wheels. Now, I am going to unbind all of the controls from all of these so that we can only use the gates, although I am going to set S to be one of these so that we can go backwards in one gear. So as you can see, we are in gear 0, trying to go forwards, and we can't. But if I switch it to gear 1, I forgot to hook up the AND gates into the engines. That is totally on me. I can then hook these up to that. Okay, so now if I press 1, then we're going forwards at around 20 miles an hour. So not too fast, but not too slow either. Going about 30, but if I switch to gear 2, now we can go to about 40. Now if I then switch to gear 3, now we can go up to about 45, 46. I bet that caps out at like 50. And now if I switch to the highest gear, gear 4, then we can go all the way to 50. We can go a little bit higher, but I was running out of room. 53, 54, 55, 56, 57. Yeah, I bet that caps out at around 60. So now we have a 4-speed, and we can also set it back to neutral. And this will just roll along. So how this works is, if the accumulator, which is down here, equals gear 1, which is this one, power 1 engine, and that is how the sentence for that would be broken up. If the accumulator equals 2, power 2 engines, which is just how this works out. It's actually, if the accumulator equals 1 and the W is pressed, then it can do that. Now, this is not at all the simplest way you could do that. In fact, there is a much simpler way that you could do it, However, it doesn't explain the logic nearly as well, so I'm going to add that, and then I'm going to add just a dragon engine, a single dragon engine. And then at the end of that dragon engine, I'm going to add the accumulator and an XOR gate. The XOR gate we're going to set to like 0.1, 0.01, hook that into the AND gate, so that it needs to be powered, but it's not actually like going to give much power. And then we have this on minimum 0, maximum 1, and then we have the scale here. You could use steps. I think yeah, that makes it go to the scale. So if we want to have 5 gears, then we need to set this to 0.2. So that it's going to go to that, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 0. That way, I have the little number display. If we were pressing, I forgot to bind this, but if we were pressing W, and we click, then it is going to go to 0.2, plus the, like, minimum that we got from the last one, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 1. We are then going to hook this into the engine, and it's just going to, like, use those outputs for that. Let's keep that. And then I can put this over here. We're going to make this into glass just because... Huh. It made the background glass too. I think that's new. But yeah, if we then hook up some wheels to this car... just the standard little body frame like this. Like that, and then we need to add some steering to the front. And then we can add the wheels. Then this is a lot simpler way to do it, but it's also less logic. So I wanted to explain it the old way. I forgot to unbind W from this. Okay, so going forwards, it doesn't do anything, unless we're in the first gear. Sure, we can go down here. Now we can make it up to 38. If I press it again, and then I'm going to turn around here, now we can get up to 43. And we're at 0.41, the engine's potential power. And if I go to 0.61, now we're going to 50, 60... One more time, 0.81. This would be the 4th gear out of 5. Well, I guess 6 because you have the neutral too, but 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, the full power of the engine. Now we can go like this, and it's just the full speed. This car uses number values, so it's a little bit more complex, like, to understand logic-wise, but it's basically just having this signal run into the AND gate, and then having the AND gate being ran from W. So this AND gate is if W, and this equals anything, output the value of this. So it is, if the bottom one equals 0.2, which it currently does, and W is pressed, then the top will be 0.21 because W is at the 0.01. It's a little odd, but it's fine. Does this work if I set the W to 0? I'm really just not sure. Oh, it does not work. Okay. What about that? It does. So we can have it like that. 0.001, and then we can go through 6, 1, and then if I don't hit anything, then it is at 0. But if I hit forwards, then it goes back to 1, now it's going to 0.4, and I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, then be sure to leave them in the comments as always. If you have any, like, anything else, like, if I was wrong about anything, you know, the general deal. Also, leave that in the comments. I think I said something about AND gates that wasn't fully true, but, like, it was for the purpose of having it there. I think I said that they didn't care about, like, the output in, which you can see from this build they clearly do, but that was for putting a signal into them at all. And since the signal on the other car was more than one all the time, it didn't matter in that sense, but I think that that was kind of incorrect, but for the sake of educating, it's not, like, bad. But once again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and see ya.